Hi, it's Katrina. Civilizations never truly disappear. No matter how old, somehow they leave something behind. Ruins, language, myths, scars on the landscape. Today we will explore the legacies of the ancient world. At least what's left of these lost cultures around the globe. Let's go. A jungle of gods, chiefs, and pineapples. On an island carved by fire and time where jagged volcanic peaks pierce the clouds, the jungle tells stories. This is the island of Marae, a Polynesian paradise with sprawling mountains and more mysteries than you can shake a stick at. And the best mysteries are hidden right under your feet. Scattered throughout the island, buried beneath layers of thick moss, are the world's weirdest stone Lego sets. Locals call them Marae, and say they are ancient temples used by their earliest ancestors. For what, you ask? For worship, of course, but also for ruling, debating, and maybe the occasional sacrifice or two. You know, blood for the gods and all that jazz. How else are you supposed to have a killer harvest? Once bustling with priests, chiefs, and a lot of people trying to stay on the right side of the war god Oro, these stone platforms were the cultural heart of the Maohi, the island's first settlers. Their culture has almost completely been lost to the sands of time. But not quite. The Maohi survive in the ruins of their temples and in the memory of their traditions. They didn't even disappear that long ago. Captain James Cook, sailing into Marae like an 18th century travel blogger, met them almost 300 years ago. He anchored near what is now one of the best preserved marae in Opunohu Valley, where over 220 sacred structures have been found, scattered like breadcrumbs through the jungle. Dr. Jennifer Kahn, archaeologist extraordinaire from the Bishop Museum in Honolulu, has been crawling through this valley for decades. She said the first marae were built along the coasts, but then, around 1350, locals got sick of beach life. Maybe too many tourists? Too many sweaty old dudes in Speedos? Whatever the reason, they moved inland and started building more there. By the 1700s, the island was popping with temples and power struggles. Ever lived in a house with someone for way too long and got so sick of them you wanted to scream? Now imagine being trapped on a tropical island with that person. After centuries isolated from the rest of the globe, the people on Marae split into rival factions and fought for dominance. Not only that, but they had a brutal hierarchical society. Dana Lipovsky, archaeology professor at Simon Fraser University, said that the elite rulers squeezed labor from the working class, much in the same way modern wage slaves are squeezed by megacorp overlords. The island was already in trouble, but the arrival of Europeans made it so much worse. Not only did they wear ridiculous hats, they brought diseases. Up to 80% of the Maohi population was wiped out in the 1800s, and with them, centuries of wisdom. The French even ruined the landscape by introducing an invasive leafy monster called Myconia. This stuff now chokes the ancient marae with the enthusiasm of a python eating a buffalo. Today, the island's forests are overrun with this pesky plant, and the sacred fields, once so pristine, have given way to endless rows of pineapple crops. Oh yes, my friends, how things change. Remember when your whole neighborhood used to be orange groves as far as the eye could see, and now it's just cookie-cutter duplexes? Pepperidge Farms remembers. But not all is lost. The next generation of Maohi descendants are digging into the past. Students like Terai Marzin, attending Marae's agricultural high school, are ignoring the textbooks and going straight to the source. They are learning from community elders who are walking libraries of ancient knowledge. Can the young generation go back to the old ways? Can they restore the Marae temples being eaten by invasive French plants? Will anything ever be the same again? When giants slept in stone. For 3,000 years, they've been watching. Now we are watching them. Buried in the sun-baked soil of Sardinia where olive trees grow and locals nap through the hot hours of the afternoon, a group of ancient stone giants has been waiting. For what? I'm not too sure. Maybe for you. These guys aren't your average statue. The Sardinian behemoths are 7 feet tall and ripped like Iron Age gym bros, and they've been hanging out in Italy for nearly 3,000 years. These dudes are old, but they still stand strong. Their faces are stern, stoic, and unbothered by the flash of tourist cameras. They give off the kind of energy you get from someone who's seen too much and is emotionally unavailable, but will still kick some serious butt. And now more of these stone colossi have been found at the site of Monte Prama, Sardinia's wildest necropolis. Archaeologists unearthed 2 more huge stone torsos, but just the torsos. 2 massive stone midsections lounging in the dirt like ancient gym equipment. Who the heck stole their limbs? And their heads, for that matter. Here's the crazy thing about Sardinia's stone titans. No one knows what they're supposed to represent. They are clearly warriors of some kind, but what kind? Were they the old king's guard protecting ancient royalty? Were they heroes or Olympians? Were they demigods or aliens? Some, in fact, a lot of researchers think they were boxers. Boxers, I say. Dario Franceschini, Italy's Minister of Culture, said they are recognizable by the weirdly stylish stone shields strapped to their abs. The shields look like a cross between a tactical belt and a medieval fanny pack. Apparently, that's what boxers wore back in the day, like way back in the day. You'd think all of these relics would be way more famous, but they're not. Nobody even knew about them until 1974, when local farmers hit something weird while digging in a field. It was a giant stone head, and the first of many statues to be unearthed. The surprise find cracked open one of the most important archaeological sites in Sardinia, home to at least 24 statues, over 200 graves, and a rabbit hole of unanswered questions. Originally, scholars thought the statues were from the Carthaginian era, that time in history just over 2,000 years ago when Carthage dominated the Mediterranean and the Romans were still in training wheels. But nope, the Sardinian boxer statues are older. Dating placed them around 850 BC, during the age of the Nuragic civilization. Theirs is a group so mysterious they basically ghosted the history books. You can think of the Nuragic people as Sardinia's version of the elves from Lord of the Rings, but with more rocks and fewer ballads. They left behind Nuragi, massive stone towers that still dot the island like ancient Wi-Fi towers. There are over 6,000 of them scattered across a place barely bigger than Wales. Between the towers and the statues, the Nuragic people left behind quite a bit compared to some other ancient civilizations. Too bad we can't figure out what it all means. Francesca Mulas of National Geographic said the towers were the beating heart of the Nuragic culture, but no one knows what they were for. Just like the statues, which may have been boxers, ancestral bodyguards, memorial mascots, or maybe stone selfies. No one's quite sure. If you think you know, be sure to tell me in the comments. And now for a quick break because it's shoutout time. I want to give a huge thank you to Alfonso Lopezi for the super thanks. It really means a lot, and we wouldn't be here without you. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already to join the Origins Explained family. Welcome to the Cave of Blood. Some places don't just hold history, they hold screams. Beneath the ruins of Dos Pilas in northern Guatemala is something terrifying. In a region where the jungle swallows stone temples and everything smells like damp secrets, archaeologists walked into a horror movie. They uncovered a secret chamber nicknamed Cueva de Sangre. For those of you who skipped Spanish class, that translates as the Cave of Blood. Not creepy or anything, totally normal. Inside were found, and maybe I need to put a warning here because it's about to get ghoulish, hundreds of chopped up human bones. These bones were not buried or tucked away respectfully. They were discovered lying around like the morning after a really bad Halloween party. I'm talking decapitated skulls, dismembered limbs, and body parts placed like set pieces in a ritual drama 2,000 years in the making. You know the Maya didn't mess around when it came to pleasing their gods. The Cave of Blood is so dangerous you can only enter during the dry season. Unless you're a mermaid, of course, because most of the year it is totally flooded. And even in the dry season, it's scary as hell. You have to crawl through its claustrophobia-inducing entryway, slither through its low tunnels, and try not to drown in pools of murky water. It is definitely not Airbnb material. But it is worth the adventure. Inside this maze of underground tunnels are fragments of humans sprinkled with red ochre and surrounded by old obsidian blades. Bioarchaeologist Michelle Blues from Cal State took one look at the remains and understood the situation immediately. These aren't bodies, they're body parts. In Maya ritual logic, an arm or a skull was just as valuable as a full person. No one alive today knows the specifics of their rituals, but archaeologists like Michelle do know the Maya believed that sacrificing humans could bring rain and good crops. They needed lots of human heads to impress Chak, the Maya rain god. only if Chak was happy with the rain's fall, feeding the crops, which fed the Maya. Archaeologists think these types of bloody ceremonies were aligned with important agricultural rituals, especially around early May, just before the monsoon season. In fact, modern Maya communities still observe May 3rd, which doubles as the day of the Holy Cross, with cave visits and rain prayers. The only difference is there are a lot less decapitations. The Maya are still technically around, so their culture hasn't disappeared entirely, but their ancient traditions have changed, and their ancient ceremonies are no longer being practiced the way they were 2,000 years ago, which is probably for the best. Nobody wants to be sacrificed these days. What the original Maya left behind in the dark, damp, and spooky caves of Mexico and Guatemala is violence. Bloody, brutal, sacrificial violence. The evidence can be found in the many pale white skulls of the Cave of Blood. The alien next door. This shouldn't exist. Not here, not then. In prehistoric Serbia, back when humans were still figuring out how not to die from eating the wrong mushroom, something really weird was going down. What archaeologists dug up near the capital city of Belgrade has been raising eyebrows higher than Spock's for decades. What scientists found are the Vinca figurines, 2,000 eerie little statuettes like primordial action figures. They have bug eyes, grasshopper faces, and expressions like they just saw your browser history. These figurines can be traced back nearly 9,000 years to the era of the Vinca culture, also known as the Turdas Vinca. They were some of the earliest known people to farm, make pottery, and craft figurines like they met E.T.'s cousins and had to preserve the moment for posterity. Seriously, these little clay figures look suspiciously like every alien you've ever seen in a movie. I know what you might be thinking. Ancient people surely had imaginations just like we do, so couldn't they have made up these alien-like figures the same way artists create amazing monsters today? Sure, they could have, but these figurines don't feel like someone's creation. They seem like they were modeled after living, breathing entities. Some of the figurines have triangular heads, oversized, almond-shaped eyes, and no discernible mouths or noses. I mean, these things are so ugly, they make Shrek look like an Instagram influencer. Some have helmets, others look half human and half lizard, and a few are straight-up hybrid grasshopper gods. Even more unsettling is that many of these figurines were found alongside terracotta masks, painted ceramics, and what seems to be an early form of writing. Some primitive linear alphabet that predates Egypt and Sumer. But hold your horses. Scientists haven't confirmed it's a language just yet, so let's set that aside for a moment. Experts have tossed around all kinds of theories to explain the origin of the Vinca figurines. Some claim the Vinca were creatively depicting their gods. Others say the creatures were inspired during hallucinations, as in from an ancient type of ayahuasca trip. It's no secret that ancient people all over the globe had access to natural psychedelic compounds. The thing is, though, and I'm sure you'll feel me on this one, the Vinca figurines aren't unique. Similar characters can be found in the artwork of ancient cultures across Mesopotamia, the Americas, and Greece, just to name a few. Have you ever noticed how ancient gods often look like something out of a Marvel multiverse movie? Coincidence? Cultural memory? Or did a lot of ancient cultures get an unexpected visit from little gray men long before the invention of the wheel? According to researcher Dr. Radvioje Pesic, the Vinca were extremely advanced for their time. But it's weird because their advancements in technology happened practically overnight. It's like a light switch was flicked on in their brains, allowing them to kickstart their own civilization. If so, it's all that remains of our ancient visitors. I wonder, will they come back? The mythical sanctuary of Odysseus. Let's get mythical, Greek style. The ancient Greek author Homer left behind 2 epic poems so packed with words they are each thicker than most Stephen King novels. He also left behind some clues about the ancient world in his writings. For centuries, scholars have been trying to separate fact from fiction when it comes to Homer's works, the Iliad and the Odyssey. And now, things have gotten real. After decades of digging, archaeologists on the Greek island of Ithaca have struck academic gold by finding the long-lost sanctuary of Odysseus. This newly unveiled ruin is suspected of being the official address of Greece's most famous, is he or isn't he a real human person, Odysseus. Homer tells us he was the king of Ithaca, a veteran of the Trojan War, a professional shipwreck survivor, and all-around mythological multitasker. However, modern historians have never been able to prove that the star of Homer's epic poems was ever a real person. That's all changed because now archaeologists are digging through his house. Or at least it might be his house. The structure is definitely huge, definitely Mycenaean from the era of Odysseus, circa the 13th century BC. But it's also a ruin, and archaeologists need some time to poke around and see what's what. The site is located at Agios Athanasios, a dramatic rocky perch in northern Ithaca that has long been known as the School of Homer. There are two massive terraces connected by stone-carved staircases. Even in ancient times, you couldn't escape leg day. Evidence from the site dates all the way back to the final Neolithic age of 7,000 years ago, with flint tools and pottery fragments that came from people who had no idea their descendants would become some of the first Greeks. Slowly, over thousands of years, the site became a glorious metropolis. Around 3,000 years ago, this place was one of roughly 8 Mycenaean settlements spread across the fertile landscape of northwestern Ithaca, which is great info and all, but how exactly do the experts know this was where Odysseus lived? It's all in the inscriptions. Archaeologists found roof tiles stamped with Greek and Latin inscriptions, including several that clearly read Odysseus. His name is written on the roof. Archaeologists even dug up a miniature bronze bust of Odysseus himself, identical to similar images of the ancient hero found on iconic Ithacan coins. I can't stress enough how huge of a find this is. Suddenly, after centuries of debate, scholars can confidently say Odysseus is officially more than a myth. The name's been found, the sanctuary has been identified, and the epic just got a lot more real. The ancient Mycenaeans left behind so much: castles, palaces, labyrinths, and the legacy of their greatest hero, a man who apparently was real. It might be time to give the Iliad and the Odyssey another read. What do you think? Book club, anyone? Secret stash of alien artifacts. This might just be the definition of a bombshell discovery. Mysterious Egyptian artifacts, a secret stash of alien treasure, suspicious museum officials, and mummified bodies with impossibly large heads. This story has everything you've come to love from Origins Explained. And it all begins with Sir William Petrie, a famous and very serious Egyptologist who died in 1942. Rumor has it that prior to his death, old Sir Willie was harboring alien artifacts in a secret room in his Jerusalem home. Alien artifacts recovered from the sands of Egypt. He had miniature mummified beings about 4 feet tall with elongated skulls and giant eye sockets. He had a golden sphere with weird symbols on it, not entirely different from the Buga sphere recovered recently in Colombia. If you haven't heard of that, go back and check out my other recent videos because this story is off the wall nuts. Anywho, Sir William Petrie allegedly had what's described as a highly advanced mechanical device. This device is made of gold, tubing, and small orbs and crosses, which honestly sounds like something Iron Man would use to charge his suit. Legend has it that these miraculous objects were quietly taken by officials to the Rockefeller Archaeological Museum, a museum that seems to swallow more history than it puts on display. You won't find a listing for Egyptian alien artifacts at the museum, because officially it has no such objects. There is no peer-reviewed, scholarly, or museum-verified evidence that these alien artifacts even exist. But if there was a cover-up going on, there wouldn't be proof. Cover-ups don't typically come with certificates of authenticity. If the artifacts are real, and they are leftovers from a time when Egyptian society was in contact with aliens, that is huge news. It's one more piece of evidence in a growing pool that aliens visited our pharaonic friends of the Nile. Ever heard of the Thule Papyrus? It's an alleged ancient Egyptian document that straight up sounds like a UFO sighting log from ancient aliens. It describes a fleet of fiery discs flying over Egypt during the reign of Thutmose III, emitting foul-smelling breath, flying without noise, and causing royal scribes to fall flat on their faces. Later, the sky filled with even more glowing objects brighter than the sun. Then, to top things off, it rained fish and birds. As you can imagine, the story of the Thule Papyrus is often dismissed by scholars as a combo of bad translations, creative storytelling, and people seeing strange things in the sky. You know, something like swamp gas or a weather balloon 3,000 years ago. When you combine the Thule Papyrus with the mysterious artifacts of Sir William Petrie, neither one feels quite as crazy. Could the Egyptians have parlayed with extraterrestrials? And if so, what do you think they talked about? Swords, swastikas, and Celtic swag. In central France lies a quaint little town called Cruzier-le-Neuf. Peaceful, sleepy, home to baguettes, maybe a few goats, and if you're paying attention, a massive Celtic necropolis hiding more than 100 graves. Graves full of ancient bling, vases, swords, and even a couple swastikas. But no, not those swastikas. These are the pre-Nazi swastikas, the ones that have been used in decorations across the globe for a whole lot longer than you-know-who was around. The necropolis stretches over 7,000 square feet, making it less of a quiet country cemetery and more like an Iron Age VIP lounge for the departed. Sadly, the bodies didn't make it because they were eaten by the acidic French soil, bones and everything. Luckily, the metal grave goods stuck around. Archaeologists from France's National Institute for Preventive Archaeological Research uncovered a whole treasure chest of goodies during a recent dig. They found copper alloy bracelets, brooches decorated with gemstones, a vase that may have acted like Iron Age Tupperware, but the prize was 2 swords, extremely well preserved. These would have been coveted weapons for an elite Celtic warrior. Forget shoes. The ancient Celts left behind their armory. One sword was long, practical, and had rings to be fastened to someone's belt, giving full-on mounted warrior vibes. Shreds of ancient fabric were still clinging to the weapon, presumably from the warrior's clothes. Experts say this blade was likely made in the 4th century BC, during a time when the Celts were storming Rome and causing Iron Age chaos. The second sword, though, this one's a little different. It was short, pointed, and decked out with gemstones, including a sheath that featured not 1, but 2 swastikas. This was probably not for stabbing. Not all swords are weapons. Some, like this one, were used by ancient people to show off their status. Someone flashed this gem-encrusted sword at ceremonies, like your friend who's a little too obsessed with their sneakers. As for the swastika, a lot of people don't know that the symbol has a long and peaceful history as a positive emblem. For the ancients, the swastika was a symbol of good luck, protection, and cosmic order. If you live on the East Coast, check out some old buildings in your town. A lot of brick structures from the early 1900s are decorated with swastikas. It was totally normal, right until the 1940s. These swords seem to come from the era in which Rome was sacked by Celtic forces in 387 BC. The long blade may have Roman blood on it. It may have even been used to terrorize the people of Rome back when they were a republic, not even an empire yet. How much would you pay for a legit Celtic war sword? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. The biggest shoe of the ancient world. Archaeologists are very excited because they have just found a shoe. You heard me, a shoe. No one ever talks about the little things left behind by our ancient friends. It's always cities and palaces, never shoes, spatulas, or grocery lists. Then again, this shoe is anything but little. It is monstrously big. Seriously, this shoe is so huge that some scholars think it may have been worn by an actual Roman giant. This shoe was found in northern England near the edge of Hadrian's Wall at a place called Magna Fort. It was pulled out of a muddy trench and is approximately 12.6 inches long and nearly 2,000 years old. That's a size 14 in US men's, size 13 in the UK, and a size 49 in Europe. Now, Magna Fort is already extremely famous. It was one of many strongholds along Hadrian's Wall, built by the Romans at the very edge of their empire. The wall and its forts have yielded some of the best Roman souvenirs in England, from ancient handwritten notes to suits of armor and enough leather sandals to open a vintage Roman footlocker. But this was no Roman flip-flop. This shoe was built from multiple layers of stitched leather held together with leather thongs and hobnails in the sole. But the real mystery is still unanswered. Archaeologists can't figure out who wore such a monster-sized shoe. Was it Roman Bigfoot? Goliath Maximus? Based on the shoe's size, it's fair to assume the wearer was built like a siege tower, possibly one of the tallest Roman soldiers ever stationed in Britain. While the average Roman male hovered around 5'6", this guy was drafted from the Norse gods. While no one can say exactly how tall he was, assuming it was a he and not the biggest Amazonian women in history, the shoe's owner must have been at least 6'6", maybe as tall as 7 feet. What do you think? Giant? Or did they eat their vegetables? The holy head of St. Oliver Plunkett. Sometimes all a person leaves behind is their head. Inside a dazzling French Gothic church, like something out of a Tim Burton dream, is a gloriously over-the-top golden shrine. It looks like a medieval tiara and a birdcage had a baby. And inside that shrine is a human head. The head of St. Oliver Plunkett, Catholic martyr, peacemaker, and the man whose cranium has seen more posthumous travel than most of us with a modern passport. Oliver Plunkett was born into the chaos of the Cromwellian conquest. You may have heard of the name Oliver Cromwell before. If St. Patrick is the most beloved figure in Ireland, Cromwell is the most hated. After the English Civil War, Cromwell conquered all of Ireland and imposed seriously harsh penalties for anyone practicing Catholicism. Oliver Plunkett became a priest in the 1650s, at the height of this religious drama when being Catholic in Ireland was about as safe as juggling flaming swords blindfolded. Oliver founded a Jesuit college that taught both Catholic and Protestant students. In 17th century Ireland, that was the educational equivalent of walking into a pub full of rival football fans yelling, "Let's all just be friends." Unfortunately, good vibes alone couldn't save Oliver. Along came the Popish plot, a spicy meatball of fake news cooked up by Titus Oates, an Englishman with a wild imagination and a grudge against Catholics. Oliver got swept up in the hysteria and was slapped with the ultimate party foul: high treason for promoting the Roman faith. Naturally, the British Crown responded with compassion and understanding. Just kidding. They hanged Drew and quartered him on July 1st, 1681. After Plunkett was pulled apart like medieval charcuterie, his body parts were buried at St. Giles in the Fields in London. But guess what? Even death couldn't keep this man down. A few years later, someone dug up his head and took it on tour. The head found its way to Rome, visited parts of Ireland, and finally rolled into Drogheda in 1929, where it has stayed put ever since. You can go see it for yourself right now. Whether you want to stare into the doleful eyes of a guy who's been dead for around 400 years, that's your decision. I guess the moral of this story is that you just never know what piece of you will be left behind. Shocking discovery in an ancient Australian cave. High in the misty blue mountains of New South Wales, Australia, at an altitude of over 3,000 feet above sea level, an ancient secret was hiding in plain sight. Within a towering rock cavity known as the Dargun Shelter, archaeologists unearthed something left over from humans who lived long before anyone else in today's video. These people were thriving in Australia 20,000 years ago. They were living in the mountains in one of the country's toughest environments. They were making tools, grinding seeds, shaping spears, and probably asking, "Hey, who took my axe?" The Dargun Shelter is a chunky beast of a cave, about 75 feet high, 70 feet wide, and 65 feet deep. It was just roomy enough to have a comfortable Ice Age family reunion. But it's beneath the floor of this cave where the secrets are. Over 693 stone artifacts were discovered under the cave's dusty ground. It was like pulling up the floorboards of an old castle and finding forgotten gold. Only there wasn't any gold. Researchers found blades, grinding slabs, and a piece of basalt that experts think was used to smash seeds or nuts. Basically, the ancient version of a NutriBullet. At least people were keeping healthy 20,000 years ago. Leading this archaeological adventure was a dream team from the Australian Museum, University of Sydney, and Australian National University. But at the heart of the effort was Wayne Brennan, a mentor in Indigenous archaeology. He wasn't just studying history, he was reclaiming it. Alongside him was Dr. Amy Mosig-Way, who explained that up until now, scientists thought the Australian high country was too difficult to occupy during the Ice Age. But this site proves the ancients had a hunger for hiking. They went up into the mountains, lived in high-altitude caves, and crushed it with their stone tools. You know, literally crushed seeds to eat. So, what did Indigenous Australians leave behind? The tools of their trades. The very implements they used to survive and thrive. For example, archaeologists found a basalt axe stone with wear patterns from smashing open the nuts. This cave was a primal snack shack. Archaeologists believe people returned to Dargun Shelter again and again, treating it like a family base camp in a place modern researchers thought was uninhabitable. Turns out ancient Aussies were a lot tougher than anyone gave them credit for, and resourceful too. 3,000 years from now, what do you think future archaeologists will be saying about our civilization? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye!